What we're going to start with is what is QB Ledger, QuickBooks Ledger? And the big question is why is QB Ledger? Let's start by taking a look at what's happening in the industry. Intuit is actively phasing out QuickBooks Desktop. At the end of the month, you can't get new subscriptions to QuickBooks Desktop Pro or Premier anymore, only Enterprise. The reason they're doing this is that Intuit has to maintain two completely different software bases, which means that they have to have all of their development and put some of it in QBO to keep moving into the future, and then keep engineers supporting QuickBooks Desktop to keep it working and occasionally put out new features. But you might have noticed that they're not really putting any new features into Desktop. All the development is going into QuickBooks Online. What that means is that for accountants in particular who are using their QuickBooks Desktop and love it because they can have as many files open all at the same time, they haven't wanted to go to QBO where every company has to have its own subscription because, face it, QBO is a little expensive. Of the regular versions of QBO, they start at $30 a month, which isn't bad, but QuickBooks Advanced is over $200. And if you have a very small company, it didn't make sense to have them on QBO. The desktop users, what they needed it for a lot of the time was all of these small files. And so that's why they put out QB Ledger, so that people in that use case where you're an accountant or a tax provider and you have lots of clients who just have little tiny files, we wanted to remove that barrier to entry. Intuit offered QuickBooks Ledger, launched in November 2023. It's designed specifically and exclusively for accountant professionals. It's not really for the business owner to use, although a business owner can have their own login and work the banking feeds and things like that. But it can only be created by an accountant user. No business owner can go and create their own QB Ledger file. Really what it's good for is those after the fact, year-end, tax-only low transaction clients, the ones that show up with the shoebox of receipts at the end of the year, and they just need their transactions dumped into buckets so they know how much revenue they had, how much expenses they had, what were the major expense categories. The only purpose is to get that P&L and balance sheet ready for taxes. So it's really just a quick and dirty data entry organizational tool that ends in reports and uploads to tax software. So it's not like day-to-day business use. It's really just that after the fact tax prep reporting tool. So that's why it's only $10 a month, at least as of this recording. They really made it low cost because all it is just a transaction import and organization tool. The first thing you need to do is figure out if it's a good fit for you. This conversation is mostly geared towards accountant users who are still desktop centric and moving into QuickBooks Online, maybe reluctantly. A lot of this conversation is directed at those QBO holdouts who are still mostly on desktop. So the benefits of QuickBooks Online over desktop is that it provides real-time access to the books. There's no more accountant's copy. There's no more having to host it. People access it from the business and from the CPA. There's no accountant's copy with a time split. You open up a browser and you log in and you're in, and you have that whole portal to all of your clients. Another hallmark of QuickBooks Online is that the automated bank feeds are second to none. They blow the ones in desktop out of the water, and you can do so much automation that it's really sometimes rare that you have to actually sit there and type in transactions, which is a big change because 20 years ago, that's what our jobs were, was looking at a list of transactions and typing them into the software. Those days are completely gone. QBO does allow you to reconcile your bank accounts to make sure that what's in QuickBooks matches the bank. It does produce financial statements, basic reports, not real extensive, and you'll see why in a few minutes. It does do 1099 NEC tracking and 1099 MISCs, so you can run those for your vendors. You can use third-party apps for importing, and you can add on payroll and time tracking, so those apps do work with it. But what QuickBooks Ledger does not have is any AR or AP at all. There's no accrual accounting because there's no invoices and there's no bills. All you can do are record expenses that have already happened and the deposits that you have received for income. There's no customers or products and services in the file at all. You can't put a customer name in the system. So all you're doing is just taking deposits to income. And if that's fine with you, then this will work. If you need to know who paid you for what, then QuickBooks Ledger is not going to be a good fit. And it doesn't even have QuickBooks payments for that reason. There's no merchant services because there's no sales forms to pay against. Denise is asking, can journal entries be added? There are journal entries. You do have the ability to use journal entries. So when you're looking at whether it's a good fit, if you have to have any information about where the income is coming from, that automatically disqualifies you from QuickBooks Desktop. Some industries that it would work for are if you have clients that have multi-companies, so you have a client that's got 3 or 5 or 10 or 30 different sub-companies, QuickBooks Ledger is a decent option. But if it's a non-operating entity like a holding company where you're just holding the money that gets sent out to other companies like in real estate, it's a good fit for that. It's a good fit for high net worth individuals. Maybe they just have W-2 income or investment income, and you can certainly track those, although there's no live investment tracking like you would get in Quicken. For this reason, it's good for real estate and property management, where all you are is taking rental income and then having the expenses. But if you want to job cost it to see how much each unit is costing you, you can't do that with QuickBooks Ledger. You would have to use QuickBooks Online Plus for that, one of the more advanced versions. It's good for trust accounts. It's good for estate accounts. It's good for private equity, only when you have big lump sums to manage. There's no bill payment in it because there's no bills. There's no AP. It's just cash-based transaction recording. If you are using QuickBooks Ledger, you can upgrade to other versions. So if you get started with it and find that you need customer transactions, tags, or classes, you can upgrade to any version except for QBO Solopreneur, which is the new version of Self-Employed. That one is still a standalone product. You can't downgrade to QuickBooks Ledger. If you have somebody in Simple Start who doesn't need everything in Simple Start, you can't just bring them down to Ledger. You would have to start another file. I'm hoping someday that changes. But for now, that is the way that it is. To create my own ledger, I have my own real estate holding company that I'm going to be using in this demo. It was in Simple Start, and I was really bummed there was no downgrade. We don't even have any real estate anymore. We set up the file because we were going to buy a building and then we didn't. So the whole thing's just sitting there languishing. Going from Simple Start at $20 a month down to Ledger at $10 a month made perfect sense. I had to export all of the transactions, export the vendors, export my chart of accounts, and then start the QuickBooks Ledger file, and then import the lists and import the transactions. And it wasn't that difficult, but it was time consuming, and I definitely had to pay attention to detail to make it work.